Sarah listened again to the voicemail, her blood running cold as she heard her mother. Helen. Call her a glorified ATM. The words echoed in the silence of her study, feeling less like an insult and more like a verdict. She couldn't just scream at them. I couldn't just pick up the phone and demand to know how they could be so cruel. For 5 long years, she had been the secret owner of their mortgage. She was the one paying the bulk of it every single month, hiding behind the anonymous name of a servicing company. She couldn't confront them without revealing her hand, without shattering the illusion she had so carefully built to protect their pride. At that very moment, they were gathered in the kitchen she had saved, plotting how to squeeze even more money out of her. But they didn't know. They had no idea that their casual, hateful conversation had been recorded, and that the ATM was the only person standing between them and the street. She pressed the stop button on her phone, the silence of her real home office rushing back in. This room was her sanctuary. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. A solid, heavy oak desk that she'd bought with her first big contract. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with marketing textbooks and business biographies. Through the wide window, she could see her own small, tidy garden, a patch of green. She'd nurtured herself. She was 48 years old. She had built her online marketing agency from nothing. She still remembered the wobbly card table in her tiny studio apartment, the flickering screen of her secondhand laptop. Now, she managed multi-million-dollar accounts. She had employees. She had respect in her field. But she did not have the respect of her family. They never understood it. They never even tried. Her father, Arthur, and her brother, Mark. 2 were hardware men. Their world was one you could touch hammers, nails, bags of cement, and wood putty. Her computer business, as they called it, was just a hobby to them, something she played at in her spare time. Even 5 years ago, when their own family hardware store, a dusty, peeling paint relic that Mark had run straight into the ground, was finally failing, they still spoke as if their work was the only real, honest work in the family. She remembered the phone call 5 years ago, as if it were yesterday. It came on a Tuesday morning. It was from her father, Arthur. His voice, usually so full of bluster and false confidence, was thin and watery. It was the voice of a man utterly defeated. The bank. They're calling the note. Sarah. Mark. He made some bad investments with the store's credit line. They used the house as collateral. We're going to lose the house. She hadn't hesitated. The anger at Mark, the hot, familiar anger at his incompetence and arrogance, didn't even have time to surface. All she felt was a cold, sharp dread. That house was her childhood. It was the walls she'd measured her height against, the kitchen where she'd done her homework. It was the only home her parents had ever known. She hung up, her mind racing. She didn't call them back. She called her lawyer. Ben. Ben was old school. A man who still wore 3-piece suits and had been her father's friend for 30 years. Back before Mark's endless pride pushed everyone smart and useful away. I'm not letting them lose their home. Ben, she had said, sitting in his stuffy, book-lined office. The air smelled of old paper, leather, and faint pipe tobacco. She was clutching her hands so tightly in her lap they ached. Ben had steepled his fingers, his sharp eyes looking at her over the top of his reading glasses. We can't just give them the money. Sarah, I know your family, your mother's pride. And Mark's, they'll resent you for it. They'll take the money and hate you for giving it. They'll see it as a handout. And it will only get worse. So what do I do? She'd asked, her voice cracking. Just let the bank throw them out. No, Ben said, leaning forward. We act smarter. The bank, they're a small local branch. They're struggling. 2, they don't want a foreclosure on their books. They just want this bad loan gone. We can buy the note. She had blinked. confused. What does that mean? Buy the note. It means you become the bank. Ben explained, his voice low and patient, as if explaining to a child. Your agency, as a legal entity, can purchase their mortgage debt. The bank gets to wipe it off their books. They'll sell it to us for a fraction of what's owed, just to be rid of it. Then, you own the house, legally. But they'll know, she whispered. No, Ben said, a small, shrewd smile touching his lips. Because we will set up a third-party company, a servicing agent, just a name on a piece of paper. We'll call it Apex Servicing. It will look perfectly official. Apex will send your family a new payment book, a new statement every month. They'll just think the bank sold their mortgage to a bigger, national company. It happens every day. He'd laid out the plan. It felt perfect. A way to help without being seen. A way to protect them from themselves. From Mark's bottomless incompetence and her mother's stubborn, self-destructive pride. You'll cover the real payment. The $3. 000 principal. Every month. Silently. They just have to pay their small $500 interest payment to Apex. They'll think they're getting by. They keep their pride. And you keep them safe. Safe, Sarah muttered to the empty room, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. She pressed play on the voicemail again. The timestamp showed it came in an hour ago. While she was in a client meeting, a missed call from her Uncle David, her father's brother. He must have called. She didn't pick up, and his phone never hung up. First, the muffled sound of a pocket, fabric rubbing against the microphone, then a faint voice. Her uncle's Helen Arthur. I'm just stopping by to drop off those tools. A door closed. Then the phone must have been set down on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee maker, because the voices that came next were sharp and clear. They were in her parents' kitchen. She knew the sound of that room. The slight, tinny echo off the tiled floor. It was her mother. Helen, I'm telling you. He's just stressed. Mark is doing his best with that store. It's a hard market. He's stressed. That was Mark's voice. High and whining. Laced with that familiar laze arrogance. I'm the one in that dusty old dump every day, trying to keep it from falling apart. And what help do we get that measly check from Mims? Big shot once a month. Then, her father's voice. Weak. Agreeing. Now. Mark. She does what she can. I suppose. Helen's voice cut him off, dripping with a contempt that made Sarah's stomach physically clench. Oh. That. What she can. It's nothing. She only sends that $500 because she feels guilty for being so successful while we're struggling. It's just her way of looking big while doing the bare minimum. She probably writes it off as a charity donation. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. A cold, heavy stone dropped into her gut. $500. She just paid her silent $3. 000, transferred to Apex last week. She had done it every single month. For 60 straight months. She scrambled to open the spreadsheet Ben had made for her all those years ago. Her fingers were clumsy on the keyboard. There it was. A long column of dates. A column of numbers $3. Ling ling ling. Sen mei yuan. Ling ling ling. Sen mei yuan. Ling ling ling. Her finger traced down the screen. Past 60 entries. At the bottom, the cumulative total $180. Ling ling ling. $180,000. And they called it nothing. The voicemail wasn't finished. Mark laughed. A high, oogly, cracking sound that she'd hated since they were children. She's a glorified ATM. That's all she is to us. And she owes us. After all Dad did for her. Letting her go to college instead of working in the store. Ali. A bitter. Ridiculously. Her father hadn't let her do anything. She'd gotten scholarships. She'd worked 3 jobs. For a brief, sickening moment. Sarah's eyes stung. A wave of guilt, old and familiar and toxic, washed over her. Am I being selfish? They did raise me. She's my mother. Maybe they're just stressed. Then she heard her mother's voice again, practical and cold as steel, cutting through her lifetime of trained guilt. Well, the ATM is about to get another withdrawal. I'm inviting her for Sunday dinner. We're going to tell her we need more. The store needs a new roof. We'll just tell her Apex raised the payment. She has to pay. She has no kids. No husband. What else does she spend all that money on? Anyway, the sting in Sarah's eyes vanished. The knot in her stomach didn't go away, but it turned from sickness to solid ice. Her hand, which had been trembling, was now perfectly steady. She moved the mouse. She clicked Save As. She named the audio file Evidence, Voicemail, 1. MP3. She opened her email. She attached the file. She sent it to Ben. The subject line was simple. Ben, we need to talk. They defaulted on our agreement. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She looked down. A new text from her mother. Helen. Hi, sweetie. Just thinking of you. Can you come for pot roast on Sunday? We miss you, Dyer. Sarah stared at the red heart emoji. She thought of the cold, cutting voice on the recording. She typed back, her thumb pressing the glass screen hard. Sunday sounds lovely. Mom, I'll be there. She put her phone down. They wanted an ATM. They had no idea the machine was about to be shut down for good. Sunday afternoon felt heavy. The drive to her parents' house, the house she owned, was familiar. But today, every landmark seemed mocking. The old oak tree at the corner, the cracked sidewalk she'd fallen on as a kid, the faded blue paint on the shutters. It all felt like a stage set for a play she no longer wanted to be in. She parked her modest sedan behind Mark's oversized, gleaming pickup truck. The truck, she knew, was a recent purchase, leased on the failing store's credit. She took a deep breath, smoothing the front of her simple linen dress. She had to do this. She had to see it through. The front door opened before she even knocked. Her mother, Helen, stood there, beaming, a floral apron tied around her waist. The smell of pot roast, rich and heavy, rolled out of the house. It was the smell of every Sunday dinner, every birthday, every holiday of her childhood. It was a calculated smell, designed to disarm her. Sarah, sweetheart, you're right on time. Helen pulled her into a hug that was just a little too tight, her cheek papery and dry against Sarah's. Get in. Get in. It's so wonderful to see you. Hi. Mom, Sarah said, forcing her voice to be light. She stepped into the entryway. Nothing had changed. The same scuff mark was on the baseboard. The same family photos hung on the wall, Mark in his football uniform. Sarah in her high school graduation gown, looking awkward and serious. In the living room, Mark was slouched on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. Hey. Sis. Hello. Mark. How's the store? She asked, walking past him toward the kitchen. It's a grind. You wouldn't understand, he muttered, his thumb still swiping. The smug, lazy arrogance from the voicemail was right there, thick in the air. Her father, Arthur, was at the dining table, shuffling through a stack of mail. He looked up when she entered, and his eyes darted away almost immediately. He gave her a weak, nervous smile. Sarah, good to see you. Hi. Dad. He looked older than she remembered. His shoulders slumped. He knows, she thought. He knows what they're planning. The realization sent another cold prickle down her spine. He was the weak link, the one who knew it was wrong but wouldn't, Or couldn't. Stop it. They sat at the table. The heavy, dark wood table that had been in the family for generations. Helen bustled around, bringing out platters of food, the pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans with little burnt onions on top. It was all a performance of happy family life. For a while, the conversation was painfully normal. Helen talked about a neighbor. Mark complained about a supplier. Arthur said nothing, just pushed his food around his plate. Sarah ate. Chewed. Swallowed. Each bite felt like sawdust. Finally, Helen set her fork down with a delicate clink. She reached across the table and placed her hand over Sarah's. Her skin was cool. "Sarah, dear," she began, her voice full of practiced concern. We're so glad you're here. We need to talk to you about something." "Here it comes." Sarah kept her expression open. "Curious. What is it?" "Mom, it's just the store. It's just so hard right now. The economy. Helen Seihu. A perfect little puff of air. And Mark is working so hard to turn things around." Mark, who was currently leaning back in his chair, looked martyred. "The thing is," Helen continued, her grip on Sarah's hand tightening just a fraction. "Apex, that servicing company, they've raised the payment on us. It's become too much." A flat-out lie. The payment hadn't changed in 5 years. "We were thinking," Helen said, giving Sarah her most pleading look. "Since you're doing so well, with your agency and all, we were thinking, maybe you could cover the whole mortgage payment, just for a little while. Just 6 months. Maybe a year. Just until Mark gets the store back on its feet." Sarah looked at her. She looked at Mark, who was now staring at her intently. His entitlement, a visible aura. She looked at her father, who was suddenly fascinated by a spot on the tablecloth. "The whole payment?" Sarah asked, letting a little surprise color her voice. That's a lot to ask. "Mom, I'm not sure. I'll have to check my finances." Mark scoffed. A short, ugly sound. "Check your finances, Sarah. We're your family. This is our home. You make more than all of us combined. It's the least you can do." "Now, Mark," Arthur mumbled, still not looking up. She said she'd think about it. I need a moment," Sarah said, pulling her hand gently from her mother's. She stood up, her chair scraping quietly on the wood floor. The pot roast was a little rich. "I just need to use the restroom." She walked out of the dining room, her legs feeling strangely light. She didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, she walked slowly down the dark hallway, past the hall closet, toward the back of the house. Her father's study was down here, and the bathroom was just past it. As she got closer, she heard voices. Hushed, angry voices. The study door was ajar. Just a crack. She stopped, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She held her breath and leaned closer. It was Mark's voice, sharp with anger. "She's not going to help check her finances, selfish cow. She's just like she's always been. Patience." "Mark," Helen's voice replied, cold and hard. The warmth from dinner was gone. This was the voice from the voicemail. We'll make her." How Mark snapped. "Because I still have the old ledgers from the store," Helen said, her voice dropping, filled with a nasty triumph. "From 20 years ago. The ones from before we computerized. I still have the book that shows she borrowed $10,000 for her surgery." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Hair appendectomy. She had been 22. Her appendix had burst. Her insurance from her part-time college job didn't cover it all. She'd been terrified. She heard her father's voice, finally speaking up. But it was weak. Reedy. Helen. No. That's not right. I told her she could take that money. I told her to just write an IOU in the book. She paid it all back. With interest. I remember. It doesn't matter if she paid it back, Helen hissed. The ledger just shows a $10,000 withdrawal. Written in her own handwriting. There's no IOU. I tore that page out years ago. As far as anyone else knows. She stole it. She'll pay to keep that quiet. She won't want her fancy clients knowing she's a little thief. And if that doesn't work, Mark added, his voice jumping in. Excited now. I'll make that call. I'll call Jim over at the furniture chain. He's her biggest client. A little rumor about his marketing consultant being financially unstable. About her cooking her books. Maybe stealing from her own family. Jim's an old-fashioned guy. He'll drop her agency in a heartbeat. Sarah leaned her head against the cool drywall of the hallway. Her chest felt tight, as if a band were squeezing her lungs. It wasn't just greed. This was extortion. This was a plan to destroy her, to ruin her reputation, her business, the life she had built with her own 2 hands. All for a few $1,000s. These weren't people who loved her. They were parasites. She stood there for another second, letting the cold, hard reality sink in. Then, very quietly, she turned and walked to the bathroom at the end of the hall. She locked the door. She flushed the toilet. She turned on the water, listening to it splash into the sink. She looked at her own face in the mirror. Her eyes were dark, but her expression was calm. The hurt was gone. The shock was gone. All that was left was a cold, clear purpose. She washed her hands, drying them slowly on the monogrammed towel. Then she unlocked the door and walked back to the dining room. They all looked up as she entered, their faces arranged in masks of polite concern. Feeling better? Dear Helen asked, her smile back in place. Sarah sat down. She picked up her fork. She smiled back. A small, tight smile. Much better. Thank you, Mom. That pot roast was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. The next morning, Sarah was in Ben's office at 800 a.m. Sharp. The smell of stale coffee and old books did nothing to soothe her. She sat stiffly in the leather chair opposite his desk. You were right, Ben, she said, her voice flat. It wasn't just about pride. It's worse. She placed her phone on his desk and pressed play. She hadn't just stood in the hallway. She had pressed record on her phone's audio memo app. The hushed, angry voices filled the quiet office. Ben listened, his expression growing darker with every word. He heard Helen's plot about the ledger. He heard Mark's excited plan to call her biggest client. He heard Arthur's weak, useless protest. When the recording finished, Ben let out a long, slow breath. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. This isn't just a family dispute. Sarah, this is criminal conspiracy, extortion, slander. They're my family, she whispered, and a small, stupid tear of shame and anger escaped her eye. She wiped it away angrily. What do I do? Ben put his glasses back on. His gaze was firm. You do what we prepared for. The payment is due on the 1st of the month. That's in 8 days. You will not send your $3. 000 principal payment. Their $500 payment will, of course, bounce. Apex Servicing will then issue an immediate notice of default. The contract they signed when Apex took over the loan is ironclad. A single missed payment gives the lender you the right to accelerate the note and demand full payment or begin foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure, she said. The word felt like a heavy stone in her mouth. It's the only way, Ben said, his voice kind but firm. They are trying to destroy you. You must protect yourself. Let them fall. They built this trap for themselves. She nodded, her resolve hardening. Okay. No payment on the first. And, Sarah, Ben added, do not contact them. Not a word. Let the legal notice do the talking. Don't give them any ammunition. She agreed. But that night, sitting alone in her house, the silence was deafening. The anger from the dinner, the betrayal, the casual cruelty of their plotting was coiling in her stomach. She thought of Mark's smug face, her mother's false smile. Ben said not to contact them. But the desire to warn them, to give them one last shove before the push. It was overwhelming. She picked up her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen. Opening the family group chat. I've thought about your request for more money. You should all be very careful about your next steps. You have no idea what's coming. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The message sat there, stark and blue. A moment of satisfaction surged through her, followed immediately by a cold wave of regret. That was a mistake. Ben told me not to. It was too aggressive. It made her look unstable. In his own living room, Mark's phone buzzed. He read the text. He laughed. Look at this, he said to Helen, holding out the phone. Little miss, check her finances is threatening us. Helen read the text, her lips thinning. She's bluffing. She's scared. She's going to be, Mark said, his eyes glittering. He stood up. She thinks she can scare us. That's it. I'm calling Jim. Right now. Mark. Wait. Arthur started from his armchair. No, she started this. I'm finishing it. Mark stalked into the kitchen. Already dialing. Back in her office. Sarah stared at the text she'd sent. Stupid. 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 That text didn't sound like a victim. It sounded like an aggressor. Mark would use that. She grabbed her phone and dialed her client. Jim. He was the CEO of the furniture chain. An older, no-nonsense man she'd worked with for a decade. He picked up on the third ring. Jim. It's Sarah. I have a difficult personal matter I have to discuss with you. I'm so sorry to bring this to you. Sarah, you sound terrible. What's wrong? Her voice was shaking. But she forced the words out. My family is in a bad financial state. They are trying to extort me for money. My brother, Mark, he's unwell. He is planning to contact you. He's going to tell you. Wild accusations about me. He's going to say I stole from my father's business years ago. That I'm cooking my books. That I'm unstable. There was a silence on the other end. Sarah. That's a hell of an accusation. I know. And I know it sounds crazy. Which is why I'm sending you a file. An audio file. It's a voicemail my uncle accidentally left me. It will explain what I'm dealing with. Please. Jim. Just listen to it. He may call you. He may even show you a text I just sent him in anger. But the voicemail? That's the truth. Send it, Jim said, his voice grim. She hung up, her hands trembling, and emailed him the file. Evidence, voicemail, 1. MP3. The next 2 days were agony. She didn't hear from Jim. Her family was silent. The payment date, the 1st of the month, was 2 days away. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, her phone rang. It was Jim. Sarah, he said. His voice was cold, and her stomach dropped to the floor. Jim. Your brother, Mark, called me this morning, about an hour ago. What did he say? She whispered, her eyes closing. He said exactly what you said he would. Jim replied. He told me he was worried about you, that you were unstable. He showed me. He forwarded me a text you'd sent him that sounded quite threatening, and then he told me he'd seen the ledgers from your father's store, and that you were a thief. He said he was worried you were doing the same to my company's accounts. Jim. Sarah. Hold on. Jim cut in. And suddenly, the coldness in his voice wasn't directed at her. It was a cold, hard rage. I listened to that file you sent me. I heard your mother call you an ATM. I heard your brother and your parents plot to blackmail you. Then, this morning, that weasel calls me and tries to do exactly that. Tries to ruin you. His own sister, who, from the sounds of it, has been paying his bills. Sarah sank into her chair. Relief, washing over her so fast she felt dizzy. What did you say? She asked. I let him finish. Jim said, his voice grim. I let him dig his hole. Then I asked him, Mark, is this your mother Helen? And your father Arthur? He sounded surprised. Said, yes. So I told him, your timing is incredible, because I've just had the privilege of hearing exactly what your mother, and your father think of your sister. And now you're calling me to slander her. I've never heard a man choke on his own words like that. I told him to never, ever contact me or my company again. And I told him that my company's legal department would be filing a formal complaint against him and your father's store for slander and attempted commercial interference. We're done. Mark. Oh. My God. Jim. Thank you. Don't thank me. I don't do business with people like that. And I don't let bullies win. You just keep doing the great work you've always done. We're good. They hung up. Sarah stared at her screen, her heart pounding. The first domino had fallen. The first of the month arrived. It was a Friday. Sarah's phone was quiet. She went through her workday. Herr Stomach in Knots. But she didn't check her bank account. She didn't check her email. At 5:00 p.m., just as she was logging off, an automated alert popped up on her screen. It was from Apex Servicing. Payment failure. The monthly payment of $500, 00 from account XXX0128, has been rejected due to non-sufficient funds. They didn't even have the $500. She stared at the notification. Her $3, 000 hadn't gone in. Their $500 had bounced. The trap was sprung. She opened the Apex Servicing portal. She clicked a button. The automated system instantly generated the legal notices. Notice of default and intent to accelerate. It was sent via email to Arthur, Helen, and Mark. A copy was also sent, via certified mail, to the house. The end had begun. The email notice landed at 5:01 p.m. on Friday. The certified letter wouldn't arrive until Monday. But the email was enough. Sarah's phone didn't ring for 3 hours. She imagined the scene at the house. The confusion. The disbelief. Mark probably insisted it was a scam. Her mother was probably blaming her father for not handling it. They were probably waiting to call her. To build up their script. To decide how to frame it as her fault. It finally rang at 8:15 p.m. She was sitting in her quiet living room. A cup of tea growing cold on the table. The caller ID was Mom. She let it ring 3 times. Took a calm breath. And answered, Sarah, Sarah. Her mother's voice wasn't warm or manipulative. It was a high, thin shriek of pure panic. Something's wrong. The bank. That Apex. They sent an email. A horrible email. It says we're in default. It says they're foreclosing Sarah. You have to fix this. You have to call them and fix this. Sarah held the phone slightly away from her ear. She looked out the window at the dark garden. Mom. she said, and her voice was so calm it surprised even her. I can't call them. What do you mean? You can't call them, Helen shrieked. You have to. They'll listen to you. Tell them. Tell them the payment is coming. This is a mistake, Mark. Tell her. She heard fumbling. And then Mark's voice. Breathless and angry. Sarah, what the hell did you do? This is because you didn't send the extra money. Isn't it you're trying to punish us? Well, you call them right now and tell them you're paying it. You hear me. I can't call them. Mark, Sarah repeated. Her voice as flat and hard as stone. There is no them to call. What are you talking about? Apex Servicing. Call them. Apex Servicing is just a middleman. Mark, a third-party company that sends out letters. Sarah paused, letting the silence stretch. She heard her mother start to sob in the background. A gasping, ugly sound. Then who? Who is the bank? Her father's voice cut in. Shaky and thin. Sarah closed her eyes, picturing the three of them in that kitchen, huddled around the phone. The three people who had plotted to destroy her. I am, she said. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was so total. She thought for a moment the call had dropped. She heard a sharp, whistling inhale. It was her mother. What? What did you say? Helen whispered. The shriek was gone, replaced by a cold, dawning horror. I said, I am the bank. Sarah repeated, enunciating every word clearly. I bought your mortgage 5 years ago when the hardware store failed and the bank was foreclosing. I saved this house. I've been paying $3. 000 of your $3. $500 payment every single month for 5 years. That $500 you've been paying, that was just the interest. I covered the rest. No. Helen breathed. No. You're lying. That's not. You couldn't. I can. And I did. Now. The cold, clear anger she'd been holding back finally flowed into her voice. And I did it while all of you sat around that kitchen table calling me a glorified ATM. I did it while you called my $180. 000 contribution. Nothing. I did it while you plotted to ask me for more. Sarah. Her father's voice was a desperate plea. We didn't mean. And then Sarah cut him off, her voice like ice. I heard you plan to blackmail me with a 20-year-old ledger that you knew was a lie. I heard you. Mark. Plan to call my biggest client and spread rumors to destroy my business. The business that was paying your mortgage. How? How did you? Mark stammered. You're not the only one who can listen in. Mark. By the way, how did that phone call to Jim go? He told me all about it. He told me about the slander complaint his lawyers filed against you in the store. You didn't just lose your house. You just lost what little reputation you had left. She heard a thud. A clatter. As if the phone had been dropped. She heard her mother let out a wail. A true, terrible sound of utter ruin. Her father picked it up. His voice was broken. Sarah. Please. Your mother. She didn't mean it. It was just talk. Please. You can't. This is our home. You can't do this to your family. Family, Sarah asked, and the word felt foreign in her mouth. You're right. Family shouldn't do this to each other. Which is why you have 30 days to leave the house. Dad. The foreclosure is final. Me laver. Ben will be handling all communication from now on. His office will send you the paperwork. 30 days, Sarah. That's impossible. We have nowhere to go. Please. You have 30 days more than you deserved. Sarah said, Do not call me again. Ever. She hung up. She stood there, her hand still on the phone. Her heart was pounding, but her hand was steady. She took a breath. Then she opened her contact list. She found Mom, Dad, and Mark. She blocked all 3 numbers. She sat in the dark for a long time. She didn't cry. She just felt empty. And then, finally, a little lighter. The next morning, her phone rang. It was her Uncle David. She hesitated, then answered. Sarah, his voice was cautious. I just got off the phone with your father. He told me what happened. I'm sure he did. Sarah said, her voice tired. He told me. You own the house? You've been paying it. There was a long pause, and he told me, you heard them. From that day I was there. Your phone. David. It pocket dialed me. I have a 3-minute voicemail. Her uncle let out a long, heavy sigh. It was the sigh of a man who had known the truth for decades. I'm so sorry. Sarah, I'm a coward. I've listened to your mother and Mark talk like that for years. I never knew how to stop it. I should have told you. I'm so sorry. You did tell me. David, she said softly. You just didn't mean to. You're the only one who's ever told me the truth. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the empty house. It was cold. The furniture was gone. All the scuff marks and family photos had been patched and painted over. It was just a box, an empty, sterile box, ready to be sold. Her family had moved out, not in 30 days, but in 60, after Ben had threatened to have the sheriff remove them. They were renting a small apartment across town, funded, she was sure, by Uncle David, who was too kind for his own good. The hardware store was officially bankrupt. Sarah was having coffee with her uncle a week after the house sold. What will you do with the money, he asked, stirring his own cup. I'm using it to set up a scholarship fund, she said, a small, real smile touching her lips. At the local community college, I'm calling it the Second Start Scholarship, for people, especially women, who need to start over, who are trying to build something for themselves. He smiled back, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Your father? He's a weak man. He was always weak. Always let Helen and Mark walk all over him. And everyone else? He reached across the table and patted her hand. But you are strong. You're just like your grandmother. Sarah sipped her coffee. It was warm, and it tasted good. No, she said. I'm not strong. I'm just done. I'm done being their ATM. I'm done being their safety net. I'm finally just done. She was choosing herself. And for the first time, it felt exactly right. It's a terrible thing when the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who tear you down. But finding the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way to finally be free. So many people stay trapped in situations like this, out of guilt or fear. Thank you for listening to Sarah's story. If you've ever felt unseen or unappreciated, or if you've ever had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace, we hope this story resonates with you. Please, if you have a moment, share your own thoughts or a similar experience in the comments below. Your story might be the one that gives someone else the strength to make a change. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this.